So I decided to just do like a surprise random Thursday live stream. I don't know if folks are out. It's like, kind of springy here. We have had like a consistent barrage of 2 weeks of rain, which is good. I mean, it's April. It's like the latter end of April. So like all of my flowers in my yard, in my backyard, and in my front yard are completely blossomed. Like some of them have already gone their entire life cycle. Like they started blossoming a few weeks ago when it was raining, and now they're dead. So that's been interesting. As we get some folks in here, I guess I just want to quickly discuss for the replay a couple things that have been going on with me relative to biohacking and nootropics. Number one, look, I still use nicotine on a pretty regular basis, the patches. Now, like I'll go days without using them just to dose other nootropics and just to tell myself that I don't need to use them for brain performance, right? And but I can honestly say that the days when I'm taking nicotine patches, I'm performing markedly better for the first 4 or 5 hours, and then thereafter I'm performing slightly better cognitively, and I do notice it. One of the really interesting things that I recently came to discover in trying to understand, in addition to the cholinergic benefits like the acetylcholine receptor binding that nicotine has, is like, well, what else is happening? And it turns out you're either making more cortisol via a heightened kind of pulse of ACTH, as the effective building block to cortisol, or you're just releasing more cortisol. But the literature is super clear on smokers that are chronically ingesting nicotine. When they stop smoking, they have markedly reduced cortisol levels from their previous baseline, right? Indicating that nicotine was increasing cortisol. The crazy thing about nicotine patches is that it literally makes you feel like you are on a stimulant of sorts, right? For most folks that can get past that, that initial, what may be lightheadedness or overstimulation, for some people, nausea. When you first start dosing nicotine patches, like if you can get over that, like it is a bitchin' brain performance enhancing thing to do. I've got a patch literally on my chest right now, like just below my left breast, of a nicotine patch. And it's just epic, man. It like wakes you up, in situations where you may need to be awake, and otherwise just helps cognitive function. So that's one of the things that I am still doing. I just like having things. Transdermal patches are really interesting, right? I'm looking into cost-wise what it would cost to put together like a really rockin' transdermal nootropic, because there are transdermal products out there. I mean, there's the nicotine patch, right? But then there's also, what was it called? I think it was called Thrive something, where it's just a combination of a bunch of different nutrients, B vitamins, iodine, some other stuff. And it's like, the stuff actually does work. Like it makes you feel very energized when you put it in. And if you have a transdermal application of it, it's like that much better. So those of you that are here, if you got questions, ask them. I will answer some questions. We'll wait to get some more people in the stream. So Thursday night, so I'm not sure how many people get in here. I'll just ramble if we don't get enough people in for questions, but I'm sure we'll have some questions soon enough. I guess the other thing I wanted to mention is that in addition to nicotine patches and the raising of cortisol that they do, is that B vitamins are like a group of chemicals that people often, it's like they're massively underrated. B vitamins, like they are necessary for, they're sort of cofactors for a bunch of neurological processes like ATP, literally synthesizing energy you need certain B vitamins for. Acetylcholine formulation, you need B5, and it's also enzymatically dependent on B1. Right. So like if you dose B vitamins in excessive quantities or quantities higher than, like, I don't know, what you maybe get in your regular diet or something, or even if you dose a B complex in the morning and then you dose like a half a B complex later, you're going to urinate the rest of the Bs out that you don't need. But like, it's like, at what point are you semi-replenishing the active cofactors for all kinds of neurological processes and you're not urinating them out? It's like there are papers that suggest, and there are people pushing for the notion that the RDA for B12 is too low. In Japan, I believe the RDA for B12 is substantially higher than ours. That below 500, they consider that deficient, which is crazy, right? And so, yeah, I think that B vitamins, every time that I take a B vitamin, I actually literally have an entire B capsule here, but I usually dump some of it out if I'm going to take it at nighttime. I get more energized. Now for those of you that respond negatively to B vitamins, I'm super sorry. I know that that can happen to people. And, I'd urge you to look into why that is happening in terms of your physiology. But if you can get yourself to tolerate it, B vitamins in the evening are exceptional for brain performance. B vitamins are exceptional for fatigue that you might have for whatever reason. If in between figuring out why that's happening, dose of B complex definitely going to help. Last thing I want to quickly mention is 9-MEBC, the dopaminergic restoration, stimulant, tolerance reversal compound, research chemical, won't always be the solution to your issues. I got a lot of people that see it and go, hey, this could be a great chemical to use, 9-MEBC, right? Increases dopamine neuron generation, may help me with my motivation issue. And then it turns out test is low, or cortisol is low, or B vitamins are low, or something. Their diet is crappy. And that's the real issue behind, the lack of motivation. And then 9-MEBC just ends up doing nothing. So keep in mind, it's cool to try things, but you got to get to the bottom of what's causing your issues at any level. Like before you think 9-MEBC or a dopamine restoration chemical is going to be the cure-all. Limit Break Ultra holds huge support. Appreciate your comment, my friends. My friend Lorcan, that's a great name, dude. It sounds like a dog droid, a big giant dog droid robot. Lorcan, me and my dog Lorcan. Lorcan is saying apparently works by reflecting light emitting from the body back into body at a different wavelength to activate peptide. Oh, that's stem cell patches. Yeah, you know what? I was recently reading about stem cell patches in a liposome. It's like a glutathione Facebook group where they were talking. Because I think they have access to glutathione patches, and they've been talking about this stem cell patch thing. Don't know, I have no idea about it. I don't, I haven't fussed with it. I have no information regarding it, but that seems interesting. I think transdermal patches of stuff is, we've already seen it with products like Thrive, and nicotine patches are insane for cognition. So I think we're going to see more of that. And I'm kind of looking into that from the perspective of the business side of Cortex Labs. Kyle Harm is asking, you take a B complex, what brand? Jarrow B-Right, B-Right. You can find it on Amazon. I think it's a good balance of both regular Bs and methylated Bs. I think the B12 is methylated. The folate is methylated. And I think it's got a pretty bioabsorbable B1 in it, which is more useful than people think. Jason is saying, I take 16 milligram nicotine pouches. What are the milligram equivalencies between two pouches for pouches? Don't know. I know that the pharmacokinetics are different, right? transdermally, arguably, you're absorbing it in a way which keeps it around longer if it's delivered if it's made to be delivered in a sustained way. So constant sustained binding to the acetylcholine receptors with a patch is going to be more pronounced on brain performance than what is otherwise a short-lived half-life of, a pouch or something. That's why gum, which has a very short half-life, nicotine gum has a very short half-life. That's why it may give you some acute effects for about a half an hour or something, but then, it's largely out of your system, or half of it is out of your system. Sidhu is saying, so yeah, as far as the equivalency goes, difficult to say. Again, pharmacokinetics are totally different. So, sustained release is much better in terms of brain performance for most people, at least, than pouches. And you're not going to get a good solid continuous binding of the cholinergic receptors, subsequent production of cortisol, which is also why nicotine patches make you feel good. Cortisol is energizing. People always say it's a stress hormone that we just don't want to have. Well, you try going low cortisol for a while. Tell me how that works. I've done it and it's not fucking fun. Okay. Sidhu is saying, can you please discuss FL-adrafenol versus adrafenol and B-phenylpirastam versus phenylpirastam hydroside? So B-phenylpirastam, I don't have experience with it. It's just a B isomer. So it's a slight modification of it. I forget exactly. It's same amount of atoms, but they're placed differently in the molecular structure of it. And that tends to marginally affect the effect of the chemical. So I wouldn't couch B-phenylpiracetam or think that it would be much more effective than hydroside. Hydroside is very, very effective at low doses. My clients that take it almost unanimously, they're this is one of the best stimulants ever. FL-adrafenol, I don't believe that I have taken it, but it's just I think it's a fluoridated version of adrafenol, which means it'll have a little more bioavailability. But I wouldn't, again, the analogs of the afenils aren't that impressive to me. Armodafinil as an example, sure, you can take 30, 40 milligrams instead of 150 of regular modafinil, but who cares? I like tried and true. Lorcan is saying, I used to take the Jarrow B vitamins, but I found the unmethylated forms of B2 and B6 they use are way overstimulating. And that may be the case. Yeah. Some of them are unmethylated, right? So who knows? That could be the case for you. Let's see. I got a question about FL modafinil. Yes, modafinil, armodafinil. Then if you respond to the person above who mixes racetams with Eugarix. Interesting. Yeah, we can't forget about, FL modafinil I have taken before. The shit was very, very potent. I couldn't really get the dose straight, so there's that. Bookworm with the $2. Really appreciate the super chat, my friend. 5 milligrams pregnenolone effective for improving testosterone. It may be. It may be. See, what I think pregnenolone tends to do is go where you need it to, where your physiology needs it to go. If you need to build more testosterone, you'll build a little more testosterone. If you need to build more adrenal hormones, DHEA, then maybe you'll pump out more DHEA. And that's essentially it. Like, unless you are in a pretty healthy place in terms of testosterone, it's probably not going to do a whole lot for you. You may have marginal increases in total tests and then subsequent increases in free testosterone, but I don't think it will move the needle very, very far. It's an interesting supplement. The first time I experimented with it, I admittedly had very low testosterone. This is in my very early 30s, which is kind of what got me into focusing on tests from a natural perspective. And then obviously TRT, years later personally, but then, years prior, hey buddy, for clients. And I noticed that it improved my physical performance, right? Now, I wasn't as specific and as meticulous about running labs back then, so I don't know what it did to my testosterone, but I would imagine it bumped it up a little bit. Kyle Harm is saying I've been taking FL modafinil again. Yeah, it's not a terrible compound. I mean, the stuff is very powerful. Again, I just couldn't find a dose. I would get a stimulant effect from it, like a modafinil-like effect. I just couldn't. I couldn't nail down a dose. So Bookworm again, thanks for the $2. May be effective. It really depends. I mean, you're probably looking at 10, 15 milligrams if you really want to get a bump in testosterone. But again, I don't have any literature to support this, but I think that pregnenolone is going to go where you need it to go, where your body needs it to go. So it may end up siphoning to DHEA. It may end up, I don't know. It may end up making you make more DHT. It's just, I don't know. It just all depends. Yeah, that is my cat, Max. He's been with me for 4 or 5 years now. Best cat like I've ever met and best dude in the world. He's such a cool guy. From the moment I got him when he was 3 months old or something, or 6 months, a very young kitten, I taught him to be very loving, right? So he is a loving cat, snuggly cat. And people don't think of cats as like snuggly beings or whatever. Like, this cat is like the most snuggly cat and loving, intuitive cat. I was going through some shit almost 2 years ago, and he was like very intuitive, and he was going through some shit, so I had to get his back. Cats, I love cats. Dogs are great too. I got a question about mixing racetams with an SSRI. I wouldn't suggest it. I mean, I think you'll be fine, but it's just you don't know what kind of interactions you may have. SSRIs, depending on the flavor, right, are anticholinergic. So I think that you'll probably get a cognitive benefit from using them together. But if you're going to do something like that, again, this is just an educational response. I'm not suggesting you do anything. I would tread, carefully and lightly, like one at a time first, low dose, see how you fare, go from there. Jammer is saying, I heard uridine may cause cancer. What are your thoughts? Yeah, no, that's based. See, this is the problem with like the Reddit fear mongering, is because it's hardly scientific. It is based off of a study where they knocked out upase in mice and then they overfed them uridine. So what upase is a uridine homeostasis enzyme, right? It's the enzyme that without it, you lead to, or it leads to uridine, dishomeostasis, if you will. that's why that enzyme's in place. So they superficially removed the enzyme that controls uridine homeostasis, and then they fed them way large quantities of uridine, and they manufactured cancer in them. That's how you'd manufacture cancer. Remove the homeostasis enzyme and then feed them large degrees of something. It's just a lab experiment that, somehow was extrapolated like incorrectly to humans. It just wouldn't happen because you can't knock out upase. They selectively knocked out upase in that particular situation. So they took lab rats and they're like, let's create cancer in them. And they did. And how they did it was they knocked out uridine homeostasis and then they superfed them uridine. And it wasn't monophosphate either, it was an analog. So chemistry is very specific. You just can't replicate that in humans. It's not the same thing at all. That's why Reddit's a good source of information for anecdotals, but then ultimately for you to make your own decisions on how you should go about doing something. But the Reddit people are just regular Joes who don't do this for they've maybe read 10 papers in their lifetime or something. Whereas I think you got to read 500 plus to be able to discern papers correctly. I really think so. And then I think you're only novice level then, but you're in. But then you need to probably read another 500 papers or something and really think about them and then validate or invalidate some of them, follow their sources, validate or invalidate those, understand it all before you can even discern that. So that's why Redditors said, uridine causes cancer, because they just didn't interpret the study correctly. Not even close. I mean, uridine 5-monophosphate is in baby's formula. It's also in your mother's breast milk. So not going to cause cancer. Kyle Harm's going to hook the keyboard up. All right, man. Michael is saying, just want to say thank you from your last stream. Been addressing prolactin with P5P. Libido is already improving. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, what we want to do on this channel is talk about stuff that is scientifically proven, that makes sense for people that are in a bind somehow, some sort of physiological bind, We're not one of those channels that it's like we're going to talk about some foreign, anti-anxiety medication and make it look like the next Xanax, but then we link you to an affiliate link. It's like there's so many channels like that now, where it's complete bullshit. They're just like, oh, and it's like this crazy spammy thumbnail, and you get in, it's like they're talking about this individual compound. It's like that dude created the video to get you to the affiliate link. He doesn't care about you. So on this channel, we do the opposite. Odie, hello. Michael, do you ever use pre-workouts before the gym? Usually nootropics. Yeah, sometimes nicotine patch. Torque stack is like a given. Not every day, but it's very useful, especially if I didn't sleep well. Cortex stack, though, also interestingly is also good for that. Cortex stack. And that's because Cortex is not only energy, but it's very, very good brain function and focus. It's just if you're concentrated or if you're wanting to do better at the gym, the extra couple sets or the extra reps, sometimes makes the difference. And you really want to focus on your workout, nootropics are very useful for that. Torque, Cortex for sure. Nupeptin phenylpiracetam is another combination that I like to use. Usually I drink coffee before the gym in the morning, so I don't necessarily need a nootropic, but Alcar is something that I've used before the gym in higher doses than I usually take for brain performance, and it certainly got me jacked up, bro. The reminder is saying, do you have a set schedule for streams? Nope. The only definite is Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. That's the definite. We've been running those for many weeks now. We won't do one tomorrow because tomorrow I am doing a podcast with Vigorous Steve, which I'm hoping to have on the channel literally tomorrow as well, if not Sunday. Ode is saying, I'm hearing a lot on Reddit about developing melanoma from tyrosine supplementation. It's crazy what theories they come up with. Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of time perusing certain subreddits, and the inaccuracy blows my mind. But at the same time, I'm not surprised, right? So I'm just like, oh, whatever. You got regular people talking about stuff, and that's cool. You guys should be talking about stuff. Those of you that don't read science papers every day of your life, half the day or 3/4 of the day. But a lot of what people are going to come up with is just theories that aren't correct. Tyrosine supplementation, those kind of things, absurd. I mean, I get the potential mechanism for that, but you'd have to be dosing as an estimation, 5 to 10 grams a day for, probably more than that for years to even consider yourself close to running into that. I don't know the dosage in CFUs. I think it's 18 billion. That could be wrong. 18 to 24 billion on bifido infanticid. Well, there's two different supplements, right? The long one that I have, the BB536 from Super Smart, I believe is 24 billion per 2 capsules. Jason is saying, sorry, I have a noob question. All good. But have you seen uridine cause uric acid to rise? If so, what can you help to keep in a range, hydration, and high dose of vitamin C? Never tested it in myself or clients in those situations when using uridine. I think uric acid, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's in a CBC, right? A complete blood count. So, that's never been a problem with me. So I wouldn't think so. Lorcan, wanting to buy your stack, but you don't ship to Ireland. I think Northern Ireland, whatever part of Ireland that's not part of the UK, we can ship to. Yeah, I'm working on the UK because their whole beef was citicoline, and it's not a prescription there as far as I know. Honestly, I think I just got targeted like we do. Jason is asking, does phenylpiracetam help with cold resistance? It may. I think the reason it's banned I think USADA bans it, but Olympic Sports bans it, it's on the banned list, is because not only does it help you function better cognitively, but it also helps you to develop more resilience in the presence of stress, right? So it's somewhat of an adaptogen, phenylpiracetam. So probably something like cold exposure, you would be more resilient or tolerate it better if you were taking phenylpiracetam. We have a user saying, I've got both your stacks. Very awesome. Appreciate that. I hope you like them. The reminder, if you were extremely stressed or going through a stressful episode, what would you take to control stress and cortisol? You'd have to identify if cortisol is actually low. I despite common belief, I don't think you want to lower cortisol all that much, because then you're going to have chronic fatigue, if you knock cortisol down, which you can do chemically, you're going to have fatigue. Yeah, you can take a chemical called cyproheptadine. It's a serotonin antagonist that also lowers cortisol. You can feel like crap, you'll have a lot less energy, but you won't be stressed, if that makes sense. That's what I would, that's one of the safest ways to do it. You got to dose that stuff carefully though. Cyproheptadine. Michael's saying thoughts on diet and sugar-free soda's effect on the microbiome. I don't know if aspartame or acesulfame has any negative effects on the microbiome. I know that they're both somewhat neurotoxic, so I don't think it's not like disastrous or something, but I don't like acesulfame, aspartame. I've recently seen a very popular YouTuber that launched a nootropic drink, and the thing has aspartame in it. It's like, what are you doing, man? No. No other thoughts on that. I have thoughts on sugar though. Sugar is demonized in a way which is like, well, it's misleading. Sugar is like when you burn carbohydrates, they ultimately all convert to the same thing, right, in your body. It's just the pace at which they do that. I tell you what, if you're somebody who works out a lot, especially lifts heavy weights, and you deprive yourself of sugar, you're going to have a rough time. You're generally speaking, you're going to have a rough time. When you lift weights, like your insulin is in a great place to deal with sugar. It really is. I recognized that as I started lifting heavy, especially when I got on TRT and like trying to lift heavier, just like I need more sugar, and it actually makes me feel great. My hemoglobin A1C was like 5.2 or something. It's like spot on. Fasting glucose 94, spot on. Nick Fontana is saying, debate Dave Lee on estrogen blockers. Yeah, there's nothing to debate. I pointed out literature that showed very conclusively that certain milieu of estradiol exposure is going to lead to venous leakage and erectile function. There's erectile dysfunction. There's a reference range on E2 for a very particular reason. Despite what they say, aromatase inhibition has been studied in men on TRT and deemed safe. There are papers on that. You should go find them. And the whole notion, we know that estrogen activates the genes involved in prostate cancer. That's not fucking debatable. We've known that for a very long time. There's also conclusive literature that basically, I think it's the paper's called, what is it? High estrogen on TRT, the low T experience. Look, estrogen is going to, at high levels, even in the presence of high testosterone, number one, can desensitize androgen receptors, and there's papers on that. But at the same time, it nullifies to some markedly noticeable percentage the experience of TRT. Countless anecdotals on Reddit, aside from the literature, which paints a very fucking clear picture. If you're not biased like they are, and you're not like looking at it, paints a very clear picture of guys that have a terrible time on TRT because they're listening to this trendy, new, very loud advice to not block estrogen. The literature on like specific picograms per milliliter of estrogen that, you know, you should be at, or if you go below that, you have a greater risk of cardiovascular events or mortality when you have congestive heart failure, is below 20 picograms per milliliter, right? Then you have a higher risk of dying when you have heart disease if your estradiol is below 20 picograms per milliliter, right? So, but on TRT, you get ED, lack of libido, obviously bloating, weight gain, water gain, acne, despite all the Redditors that say it's just testosterone, it's estradiol as well. When you go above a certain range, that's going to be different for different people. 35, 40 picograms per milliliter, you know, it's 55 on the very highest. For some guys can get away with that. And that's just the bottom line, right? It's just, there's no debating what is already true at all. And so that study was, so like with TRT, to get the TRT experience, yes, you should manage estrogen, like for most guys. And it should be in the, 20 to 25, 30, max picograms per milliliter range. You can have a lot better time on TRT doing that. Some guys will have the greatest time at between 15 and 25 picograms per milliliter. Now, again, with congestive heart failure, you probably don't want to push those limits. You want to stay right around 20. And then in the 20 to 31 picograms per milliliter range, I think was like, less susceptibility to death when you had, cardiovascular disease. Below 20 was more. And then above 30, was it above? Yeah, I think it was above 31 was also more, but slightly less. So yeah, you can't, it's like debating the keto folks. I would never debate my irrational ex-girlfriend, right? Like I'd learned my lesson. Like if there are people that are contending things that just aren't true, you can't debate them. And then they had Danny Bossa and, like their people and all these minions repeating what they said in a very aggressive way. That's no means by which, first of all, a cordial discussion can happen, but it's also no means by which a scientific discussion can happen. So those guys can refute the fact that E2 receptors in the pituitary, bound to excessively with high levels of estrogen cause hyperplasia, the lactotropes, and give you pituitary tumors. But they can't. Like, you can't refute that. It's published literature, man. That E2 is prolactogenic, on and on and on. So, unless they want to walk back everything, a large degree of what they said and make it clear that it's like you should manage estrogen, but you maybe don't want to take high doses of AIs, like just more clarity on it, then there's just no debate. I mean, those guys are like the keto guys, like completely antithetical to published literature. And any doctor, I'm not a doctor, right? I just make physiology a study of my life. Any doctor worth their salt will tell you the same thing, including Rand McClain. I got a comment on our stacks. Well, brother, you're taking a bunch of different things. So I remember you from a Facebook group. Torque affects it all with 2 caps. Can I take 3 caps? You need to get to the bottom of whatever it is that's ailing your neurochemistry, because you're on a bunch of stuff. So, I mean, the way that you're going to respond to nootropics is going to be very different than the average person. Serene 618, best supplement for countering brain fog post-orgasm. I mean, you may be dealing with some drop in free test. I forget what the literature says on that. I don't know exactly what's happening there. You're obviously prolactin's going up, so the literature is pretty scant on whether prolactin is, high levels of prolactin are just above the range or sudden increases cause brain fog. So I don't really know what would be causing that. Got to look into it. You're also, I think you're secreting, well, you're secreting some degree of amino acids, certainly some salt. Yeah, look at your electrolytes. Like look at everything and see what you're secreting and see what ultimately that's taking away from. And that'll probably therein lie your answer. Jason is saying, would you get benefits from vitamin B through sulbutamine? Yeah, I mean, it's bioavailable B1. It's like a potent version of B1, so I think that you would. I could never really get the dose of sulbutamine right in a way which didn't give me side effects. Like, I got some positive benefits from it. It's going to hyper make you make acetylcholine, and that's what I think was the basis for the side effects that I got on sulbutamine. But definitely, a pretty powerful nootropic for some people. I think I had a super chat. Someone here. Okay, Jammer. Is there any vitamins that you would that would diminish the effects of a nootropic? Would grapefruit amplify the effects? Don't know. That would be a question for people that are into liver enzymes and metabolism and things of that nature. I think it'd make some of the compounds stay around longer via fostering maybe longer function or presence of certain liver enzymes. That's why it's contraindicated with certain medications. You may want to double check that. Just not my area of expertise. Vitamins that would diminish the effects of a nootropic depends on what's competing for what. Like if you take tyrosine with uridine, somehow through the dopaminergic interaction, they nullify each other, which is bizarre. And I figured that out in the beta testing process for Cortex many years ago, and then replicated it with other people. Like, I just don't notice the effects when tyrosine's in the mix. Same thing with tyrosine and 5-HTP. They actually do compete for uptake. So you'll have somewhat of a nullified effect between the two of them. Brain just chooses which one, it's ultimately going to use. Other vitamins. No, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. B vitamins typically tend to help. Magnesium, calcium supplements typically tend to help, and that's via all the magnesium, calcium firing and in neurons, related to neurotransmitter firing. So that is what I would say about that. Any other vitamins that would affect the effects of nootropics? Yeah, again, most vitamins are going to potentiate them via being neuroactive or cofactors for neurological processes, including neurotransmitter synthesis. Glazed 420. What's the date? Oh yeah, it's already 5/4. I'm like, when was 420? I have 2 bottles of Cortex. The MFG is 322. That's the manufacture date. That's not the expiration date. And the expiration's roughly 3 years post the manufacture date. So you are good to go for another 3 years. Well, 2.5 years basically. Big Boy is saying, what's a good beginner stack for fatigue and gym endurance? Well, those are two different things, right? So, because addressing fatigue, I wouldn't suggest a nootropic stack if you have ongoing fatigue, right? Because if that's a subpar cortisol output, nootropic is going to make things worse. If that's a subpar testosterone output, nootropics may help, but you got to look at that. I would suggest looking at why you're fatigued to begin with. That's going to take a lot of research and a lot of figuring out your own body. I mean, sometimes it could take months to really get to the bottom of what is causing your fatigue. But I would say Alcar would be useful for that, just as a broad brush recommendation. Most of the racetams, but especially phenylpiracetam, would be useful for fatigue. Gym endurance, both Alcar and phenylpiracetam. Thoughts on ephedrine? Not many. Sidhu is saying theanine calms them down and caffeine and choline boost for the most part. Jason, what are your thoughts on steroids and creating anabolism through the estrogen receptor? Not many thoughts. I have seen people that have had really, really crappy sexual dysfunction characterized by potentially a dysregulation or desensitization of the androgen receptors, which get which is characterized by a strong lack of libido, sensation, and erection quality, which seem to get sexual benefits when they either take E2 or they raise estrogen. And the literature, I think, is pretty clear on that. Estrogen can act as sort of an intermediary or like a temporary temporary libido driver for people that are androgen deficient. It's not like a great solution or something, just like cocaine can be a temporary energy inducer for those with CFS. Doesn't mean it's great. Ever use any sketchy supplements like DMAA or DMHA? I have not. I forget what they do off the top of my head. So if you want to remind me in the comments section, I can get to that. Smiley face says shortens refractory period. What are we talking about here? Bromantane, perhaps? Yeah, bromantane should shorten refractory period. P5P to an extent. Obviously, cabergoline, bromocriptine, but those are prescription only. And used to lower troubling levels of prolactin. I wouldn't be using those things if it was just a little bit above the reference range. I think once you get to 60 plus, nanograms per milliliter, then you want to, use cabergoline or bromocriptine, just heavy D2 agonism. You also want to lower estrogen because the E2, binding the E2 receptors and the lactotropes just causes hyperplasia, causes the pituitary to grow and causes you to pump out more prolactin. The reminder is saying or asking, is it common to have a stress response to Alcar or carnitine? Yeah, it depends on the dose. Is there a way to reduce or avoid this response? Yeah, maybe bring some theanine in with it and see if that helps. But yeah, it's been widely reported that a gram or above for people tends to give them that response while still being like pro brain performance. It tends to make people feel a little anxious or have the stress response. But I mean, if your sympathetic nervous system or if your stress response is already primed to be that way, I would wager that's probably what's happening here, and that's just potentiating it. Michael is saying super potent peripheral stimulant can be compared to some recreational drugs. Very energetic and can have some serious sides. Oh, that's ephedrine probably, which is why we don't talk about it. I've never really seen, well, it's like we really don't know with TMAO and Alcar, right? Ultimately, you're looking at choline supplements in large quantities, which would theoretically, right, or in people produce large scale amounts of TMAO via the gut bacteria that the choline would feed. However, Alcar is not a precursor to acetylcholine, right? It's just an enzymatic donor to the production of brain acetylcholine, which is much, much different than choline bitartrate, which you swallow, goes into your gut. Certain bacteria feed on it, and then it ends up crossing the BBB in measurable amounts. But there's where you can run into TMAO issues with large doses every day for many years. I would wager, it's just, we also don't have people that have been taking choline in large quantities and then seeing them like 40 years later, when they're in that window of potentially having heart problems. Aside from like Ray Kurzweil and the guy Rick Rosner, one of the highest IQ numbers of like all time still alive, those guys both take cholinergic nootropics. I mean, if you look at Ray Kurzweil or Rick Rosner with a 194 IQ, I think they're doing pretty good. Sidhu is asking, do I think choline will help with brain fog or acetylcholine depletion caused by cannabis use? Well, the literature is also very back and forth with acetylcholine. Like some papers say that cannabis will create higher concentrations of acetylcholine, and some say it'll deplete it, right? So I really don't know. But yeah, choline will help in either case. Well, in the case of depleting it or at least inhibiting firing, that's what I would wager cannabis is doing more than anything, because anecdotally, if I ingest cannabis, which these days I haven't smoked pot in probably a year and a half, maybe more. I just don't these days. I don't care. It just doesn't help me in any major way. But historically, if I've smoked pot or ingested cannabis, cholinergics always helped me to function better. Like, so I got the benefits of the pot, but also didn't lose my like coordination of thinking. Big Boy is saying any biomarkers to look at when trying to address fatigue. Yeah, I would look at all of your B vitamins. If B12 is anywhere below 500, I forget the measurement, like the actual measurement, but if it's below 500, address it ASAP with a either a liquid B12 supplement or just a general B complex. Again, in Japan, their RDA, or no, their reference range for B is like you're deficient below 500 for B12 in Japan. So they know something we don't know, right? And there's literature on this and scientific discussion that we should have a higher low end of the reference range for B12. So I would look at B vitamins. You're going to want to look at testosterone for sure. If it's low, that's like, one major cause of fatigue. You would want to look at cortisol for sure. If your adrenal glands don't make enough cortisol from ACTH signaling from the pituitary, then you're going to feel very crappy and have profound fatigue. If you have large-scale oxidative stress from something you are doing or a post-viral illness, then you want to take large amounts of glutathione, liposomal glutathione, or Glynac to deal with that, and that may alleviate your fatigue. Other than that, biomarkers besides those for fatigue, yeah, every sex hormone for sure. Excessive levels of estradiol could cause that. Low levels of testosterone could cause that. Low levels of cortisol could cause that for sure. Lorcan is saying apprehensive about trying research chems like 9-MEBC for the sake of some generalized brain repair. I actually think that's a very good, noble, position to have. Because if the only way that you can really determine if dopamine is your problem is if you've ruled everything else out. People sometimes don't have time to go through that process of true biohacking, getting labs on everything and narrowing it down to what ultimately is you can't find anything wrong. So maybe it's dopamine. So then they just jump to using 9-MEBC, and some get very positive results and some do not. It really all depends. If you have a reason to believe that dopamine is problematic, and a good reason would be you've been dosing Adderall for 7 years, then 9-MEBC would be a good strategy to go down, or, if you have some sort of sexual dysfunction that, you've tried to address in other ways, and potentially BC would help. I really wouldn't be my first choice for that because it's usually hormonally mediated. People are focusing too much on neurotransmitters. They're like, acetylcholine is somewhat at the beginning, and then they mildly release, and they have all these weird burst patterns in sexual function, like in the beginning and the whole ensuing cascade of sexual function, but it's largely hormone dependent, largely hormone receptor dependent. So, but I like the idea of being apprehensive about it for sure, Yeah. It's a safe compound to take, all things considered, but if you don't know why you're taking it, if you're not sure or pretty sure it's dopamine, then, yeah, whatever. If you want to play around with it though, and resensitize your response to stimulants, then taking it is useful for people. That's what I would say. Yes. So Jason is asking anything to stack with a 7 milligram nicotine patch. The Torque stack would be obviously this is my product. I built it, so I'm biased. But if you take Torque, 2 capsules of Torque with a 7 milligram patch of nicotine and a shot of espresso, and you dose them all around the same time, 8 hours, 9 hours of solid productivity. And the first 4 hours are going to be very intense. That's what I would suggest. I've taken other stuff with it, sure, but just take 2 capsules of Torque with a 7 milligram nicotine patch. Focus. There you go. And a shot of espresso, and thank me later. Lorcan, you are welcome. What are you guys doing tonight, man? It's Thursday. It's been raining here for 2 weeks, so we haven't really been able to do a whole lot here. But now it's I don't know, the next couple days are going to be nice. I've got a live stream tomorrow with Vigorous Steve. Not a live stream, a podcast, which I will put on the channel. It's going to go on our channel, the whole podcast, probably tomorrow. So look forward to that. Going to be dope. We'll talk about nootropics, obviously. We'll talk about hormonal function. We'll talk about TRT. We will talk about entrepreneurship and business, killing it as a man. I think we have a lot of potential topics, and I've got loads of questions for Steve to have us discuss things that we don't often talk about on this channel. And then, he's got questions for me as well. So it's going to be ripping hot, dude. It's going to be shit hot. That's an army phrase. SM, PA weather does suck right now. Yes, it does. It's just, Pennsylvania weather is I don't know, you get 5 to 6 months of pretty decent weather. And then, maybe in the spring and in the fall, you get about a month of decent weather. And then it's all shit from there. It's all shit. Yeah. Another pod with Steve. Going to be awesome. going to be awesome. And those of you that want to, see me do podcasts with other creators, just keep pinging them in their comment section to do stuff with me, because I'm reaching out to some of them. I've got some people lined up, so look forward to that. But it's difficult. People are busy. Like, you got to really let them know. The community almost has to let them know, hey, we want you guys to do a podcast together. Zach with a big super chat, $19. Appreciate the super chat. Let's see if I can make the height a little bit. What is it, 1100? So we can get your whole question up here. And we'll go 1200. Let's just go low thing. Okay. Zach is saying, question about TRT. Do you think it helps in fixing or getting back my motivation or positive emotional motivation that I lost from taking Adderall? Also, would it help to get sexual function back from an SSRI? We have two pharmaceutical drugs that did some heavy modification to your brain as well as your hormonal system, in the case of taking the SSRI. I think that TRT is the backbone to recovering from the sexual sides from an SSRI. It is the backbone, yes. But, thereafter, TRT is not just TRT. I mean, TRT is testosterone injections, but then you've got to manage estrogen, and you do, despite what you've read on the internet. The internet is the internet for a reason, and Reddit's Reddit for a reason. But once you find your adequate range or ideal range of your labs, and sub 800 nanograms per deciliter total test is not therapeutic, right? Above 800 is really where you get the therapeutic benefits. This is established literature. And then, for people with PSSD, you're going to want to be in the 15 to 20 picograms per milliliter range of estradiol. That's just where you want to be. You don't want to be above. Above, you'll get libido, but your junk is still not going to work. At the same time, though, since neurosteroids play a role in libido, particularly that kind of mental, visceral connection, you're probably going to want to dose HCG as well, so that you're making high amounts of neurosteroids. When you go on TRT, you'll make less. You're still going to make some. You're still going to make DHEA, pregnenolone, just not as much as you would otherwise. So taking HCG is going to keep you fertile, as well as help you make neurosteroids, which will aid in that situation. But dialing in your numbers is going to be, it's a dance. It's a tricky situation. But yeah, once you're at what should be near supraphysiological levels of tests, again, nothing sub 800 nanograms per deciliter, and between 15 and 20 pgml estradiol, and you keep it there, even with HCG in the mix, which is going to be estrogenic via the additional testosterone conversion, from the Leydig cells, from the LH-FSH receptor binding from HCG. It's then you got to keep it there. Then you got to keep those numbers there for a sustained period of time. Make sure prolactin is not high, right? Because estrogen is prolactogenic, and SSRIs make changes in the prolactin system, which expose you to prolactin while you're on them, some people. And long exposure to prolactin, it's there's not even much research on that, other than it inhibits erections at the vascular level at the penile base. So it's longer term, we don't even know how long-term prolactin exposure affects these systems. At least I don't know. I don't imagine positively. So you can get your sexual function back. I have done it before with men on PSSD, but it's a long, grueling process of trying to find the right ranges and staying there when you get there. So TRT is the backbone. I hope I made that clear that it's just the backbone. It is not the cure-all, but it needs to be in the picture. Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't waste time. If you got continued lack of blood flow to the organ, then you're risking fibrosis, and the vasculature just wanes down over time. The less blood is flowing through it. That's common sense, right? So you want to be addressing it. The dopaminergic modification from Adderall can be addressed with 9-methyl-beta-carboline or 9-MEBC. I've seen that be very successful in this case. So you want to look into that. At the same time, yeah, sex hormones, especially testosterone, do modify dopamine function. Not so much in a reparative way, but more in a release capacity, which will help when you're used to binding to the dopamine transporter and essentially inhibiting it. so that, you prevent the reuptake of dopamine for so long. Now, without it, you don't have all that dopamine in the synaptic cleft and you're feeling less than optimal. Testosterone will certainly help. Thank you so much for the $20. Really appreciate your super chat, Zach. I hope hope that gives you a good foundation from which to work. If you ever need to grab a consult with me, please do. It's one of the things that I work on. And you can get better. You can get better. It's just that the point of confusion is people think it's neurotransmitters and it's not. It just isn't. I've done everything under the sun with clients to deplete serotonin, antagonize the postsynaptic 1A receptors, presynaptic 1A receptors. None of it works. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate your time here and your inquisitive nature. I hope you get better. Austin, P5P seems to improve my refractory period quite a bit. Yeah, if you don't have super high prolactin or, if it's like in the normal range or whatever, then yeah, it should help. You're just going to synthesize more dopamine, which is, prolactin inhibiting hormone, effectively doubles as that. Battle stimulants when? I don't know what you mean, man. I don't know. Stimulants all the time. Stimulants when you want to get work done, and then knowing how to like meditate or take theanine when you want to calm down or chill. And then taking days off of everything, I think, is useful. If I get too sympathetic for a while, like in that dominant sympathetic state, I don't know. It starts to make me feel less like I'm connected to the things I love, or my cats or something. Reclaimer, I'm at the gym at the same time as this live stream. Fucking awesome, dude. Hope you're killing it, man. I love that. I was actually thinking of going for a second gym session today. Like I had one this morning. I was like, well, let me go again, but figured do a live stream instead. That would be better for my shoulders. Darren is asking, how does cyproheptadine work for reducing cortisol? Mechanistically, it's doing something in the pituitary gland is what I would wager, because cyproheptadine also increases the pulsatile release of LH and FSH temporarily, which is going to give you more serum test. So it's probably working on either the hypothalamus or pituitary gland. The ACTH producing cells in the pituitary or in the hypothalamus in the hypothalamus is probably where it's working in reducing cortisol. But there may be some other mechanism independent of that I don't know about. We don't talk about sources for SARMs, etc. No sources on the channel typically. You just Google around for that stuff. You'll find sources, and you ought to go to the Nootropics subreddit so that you can find what people trust. Mobe, thanks for the $1. If you got a question, ask it. Sidhu is saying, any thoughts on TRT gels or creams versus intravenous TRT? We're not doing intravenous TRT. You're just doing, intravenous TRT. Wow. That would be a disaster, my friend. So no, except for that creams seem to make you make more DHT. So if you're prone to hair loss, like genetically, you're going to lose it quicker via the higher levels of DHT on cream. I think I have no personal experience with it myself. I've had clients on cream and they seem to do just fine. It's a little harder to dial in though if something's wrong. The protocol is harder to dial in if something's wrong because you can't be very granular. I mean, what are you going to do? Like do a quarter of a pump of cream and then run labs, like, whereas, you can literally change the subcutaneous injection, a half of international unit, which reflects 2 milligrams or something. Like you can be that granular with injections. Mantis is saying, will I get arrested for shipping a small amount to my house in California? Small amount of what? Don't know what you're referring to. Most nootropics are legal to have, so no. The only thing you really can't get, or at least through Amazon in California, is syringes, interestingly. I don't really know why, but... Jammer is saying, wife is almost completely off of Cymbalta now, down to 20 milligrams every other day. She does great on modafinil. Do you think NIMBC would help? I forget the mechanism of action of Cymbalta. Is a tricyclic antidepressant. Enhances levels of neurotransmitter serotonin, but how? Oh, dual reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine. I don't think 9-ABPC would be useful for that particular situation. Yeah. You would want, I think that tyrosine would be a better option, honestly, tyrosine, because of the noradrenaline that you'll build from it. Alternatively, mucunapurines would be a better option than 9-MeBC. Now, like, yeah, you may make some noradrenaline from the dopamine that 9-MeBC is going to help you make more of, but again, it's not going to be direct like it is with tyrosine. So I would say tyrosine would be a better option. I'm glad she's almost off of it. That's great. Yeah, I mean, just keep working down, man. Keep working down. Take it slow. I watched like a 6-year-old clip of Joey Diaz, and actually it was somewhat recent. Joey Diaz and Joe Rogan today of Joey Diaz getting off his Xanax, and he's like, dude, just taper down. He just like tapered it down it took him 6 months on like 8 pills a day or something, but you know, it is possible. You know, all the reuptake inhibitors, they can be useful for certain things. There's so many problems that come about, you know, with the stuff. Zach is saying, how does Adderall cause anhedonia in people? Does Adderall damage the dopamine receptors? Thank you so much for the $5. Really appreciate it. As I explained before, with Adderall, like you have the dopamine transporter, right? And its sole job is to remove dopamine from the synaptic cleft and then recycle it so that it can be released and used later. But when Adderall binds to the DAT and inhibits that process, well, then you just have this accumulation of dopamine that's somewhat unmanaged. And so like when you then remove the Adderall from the mix, your, you know, D2 receptors and other dopamine receptors are very used to having large amounts of dopamine there. Some of them may have desensitized somewhat. I don't think completely, but somewhat, which is then problematic because you don't get the dopamine receptor activation that you're used to, nor do you have enough dopamine in the synaptic cleft that you're usually used to. So that's how it causes, you know, sort of a dopamine withdrawal. And that's how things in that case, like anhedonia, can be brought about, because I think anhedonia is multifactorial, dude. Like, you know, it's not the same thing for certain people. You can get anhedonic when you drop your estrogen too low. You know, some people think based on some of my recent videos or comments that I'm like pro dropping estrogen or something. It just needs to be in a tight range. Otherwise, and it's too high, it's going to cause ED, libido issues, potentially pituitary tumors, not give you the greatest experience on TRT. Like literally, it's like low T symptoms when your estrogen's too high, but too low, it's going to cause problems as well. And one of them is anhedonia. You know, if you're sitting at sub 15 picograms per milliliter long enough of estradiol, you're going to feel like you don't like anything. So that's essentially how Adderall causes anhedonia. It is through a dopaminergic mechanism. And that's my opinion of looking at the, you know, the mechanics of how Adderall works, as well as real life experience with real people that have taken Adderall to build their $1 million businesses, and then they got off of it and they feel just how you felt, and then working with me to resolve it. So Lorcan, appreciate your $2 and €2, looks like that is. Jammer, of course, thanks for reminding me I missed your super chat. Joey D, yeah, funny guy, man. Those guys are funny. My one of my major goals is to get on Rogan one day. I think I can do it. SM, have you looked into the use of genetic SNP? Don't know what that is. To dial in nootropic use to determine what to try. I imagine it's some sort of way to measure like what you may be deficient in genetically, or like what your genetic kind of profile is. But no, I haven't looked into it. Pascatak is saying, bromontane being an adaptogen, would you advise it to take it daily or cycle it in terms of anxiety management? I would not suggest taking bromontane if you have, you know, some sort of anxiety disorder. I just wouldn't take it, you know, at all. You'd want to address whatever's causing it. You want to get to the GABAergic and serotonergic mediated mechanisms to try to fix it. Jason is asking, theanine and theacrine for important interview. Well, theanine will slow things down. You really wouldn't need it unless you're stacking the theacrine with another stimulant, which we might do, which you may see this company doing in a product launching soon, in which case theanine is very useful for focus and flow. But, you know, teocrine gets a lot of good accolades because while it's stimulating, it is, not as potently jitter inducing as caffeine would be, or like high dose theobromine. So it's almost like you get that stimulant effect, but with largely devoid of some of those major stimulant kind of jittery effects. That's why teocrine is really useful. Good question. Darren is saying that he's got ADHD. Is it possible to take 9-MeO-BC to upregulate dopamine receptors for 3 days and then go 4 days on amphetamine per week? Couldn't really advise you on that because we're talking about, an amphetamine here. Zach says that'll explain why anxiety is going through the roof. Yes, it may. We got a lot of questions today. I didn't know like if you guys would be around for a live stream or up for it on a Thursday night, but bitchin', man. You guys got other questions? Ask them. We'll probably run this for another 20 minutes or so if we can get enough questions. Otherwise, we'll just kill it. I was thinking about like going to the gym for a second time, but then I'm like, nah, my shoulders wouldn't love that. Like I'm already running out of things to do because I'm like, I got to give this muscle group a break and whatever. So I decided live stream would be good. And nicotine patches, man. I put a nicotine patch on probably about 10 minutes before the live stream. Very, very awesome. I recently came to learn that they also increase cortisol, which, people think is a terrible thing. But again, you don't want to have low cortisol. You're going to feel very crappy. You raise it just enough, you're going to feel energized. Cortisol peaks in the morning. That's one of the reasons you have, good solid energy in the morning. It's because of cortisol. Keep that in mind. Jason is asking thoughts on saffron for cognition and depression. Yeah, I think the predominant thing that saffron is doing is it is a massive free radical reduction, oxidative stress reduction chemical. I did a whole breakdown on saffron where its antidepressant effects are not really attributable to serotonergic activity. If there is some, there's a very mild bit, but it's largely mitochondrial optimization, ROS scavenging, free radical reducing. Ryan Realtor is saying, what brand of nicotine patch? I don't know. Do I have the package? I don't have the package. I don't know. I have gotten Walgreen brand nicotine patches before, and they were awesome. The ones that I have now, these things here. So this here, I don't know if you can see that. It's that there. It's a small clear patch. I don't know the brand of this one, but it's. I mean, within 15 minutes, I start to feel like I've literally taken a lot of tyrosine, which is like very, very impressive. And they're kind of expensive, right? Like these are $50 for 20 of them, so it's like but I don't use them all that often, so it works. SM is saying no response to Alcar 500 milligrams to a gram. Keep dosing until response. Now, I'd say that you should figure out, what response are you looking for, first of all, and like what is inhibiting your energy. Do you eat enough fat? Because primary mechanism of action, one of them is fat transport to brain mitochondria for cellular ATP synthesis, and so if you aren't eating enough fat, then that would be why. That'd be one potential reason why. But yeah, I mean, you may in some rare instance be one of those people that just needs to take 2 to 3 grams. People do. You may also want to look into injectable L-carnitine. Can't really advise you on that, but people do it, and that may be better, much more higher bioavailability. So that could be something to try. Darren is saying, do you build tolerance to theanine? I'm taking 2x 800 milligrams a day, and it really works great. Depends on the person. Yeah, it depends on the person. I don't think tolerance is like some sort of like receptor side problem with theanine. I think tolerance is more whatever is causing you to have, that sympathetic nervous system state or anxiety is just upregulating via its own mechanism, right? It's just like coming back or whatever. It's taking precedence over you trying to calm theanine down. This is why people will try stuff that'll work for a few days and then it stops working, like something else took precedence. Chemistry is so very specific and complex. It's like I'm 16 and a half years into studying physiology at all aspects, male physiology predominantly. not only do I learn new things every day, but it's like the more you learn, you realize the more you don't know. That some of the things that, like, as you get deeper into being a lot less surface level, you realize billions upon billions of distinctions are still there for you to have. Literally, there's so much we don't know about physiology. I don't know how I got on that tangent, but yeah, homeostatic response to L-theanine. You shouldn't develop a tolerance unless the thing that's causing you to have anxiety is just creeping back into the picture, in which case, good luck. Jason is asking, does nicotine have any benefits taking it pre-workout? Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like, I mean, I have a nicotine patch on now, and feeling like this going to my workouts, like, would be amazing. The last time I took a nicotine patch in the morning, because again, I just like to drink coffee, sometimes a select few nootropics and then torque before the gym, was like 3 weeks to a month ago. And yeah, I walked in there like a madman, like just like a lot of energy. So if you want to try it for just before the gym to have the energy to go to the gym, then go for it. Again, if you respond well to it, like meaning you don't get significant side effects, it's just potently stimulating in a way which, I mean, for me at least, and anecdotally for some of my clients, do not get overstimulated. Like, you just feel incredible. Strong Ahmed. Love that name. Can you take Cortex for life? Well, sure you could, but I mean, you're pretty potently working on neurogenesis with uridine and acetylcholine, and I don't believe you should do that every day of your life. I think you kind of need time to let your brain balance out, and also to see if what you're trying to repair has been repaired, or like you're functioning better. A lot of reports of people taking uridine for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they're like better at something cognitively for the next 5 years. They don't have to take uridine anymore. So kind of my take on it. It's also made to cycle, but the new Cortex, which is launching probably July, maybe late June, if I can get the product manufacturers to launch it sooner, like just hurry up with the lead time. It's going to be a different formula. So it'll no longer be the current formula. I will reveal the formula once it launches. It's going to be sick though. It's a focus and flow stack. It's like Torque in that you can take it and then like within 25 minutes or less, you're just like, okay, my brain's totally turned on. Like, I want to tackle anything and everything, but it's different in that it stimulates you, but it gets you to flow, like to be in flow. So your verbal fluency is turned up, your ability to work is turned up, you're stimulated, but not potently overstimulated, and you're in a good place to focus and get things done. And look forward to that. It's going to be awesome. Kim Gordon. Hi, Kim. Hope you're doing great. Saying Nootropics Depot, and I hope your son, I believe was your comment, still likes Torque. Nootropics Depot is plugging fenugreek. Incidentally, I have 0 racetams now. Have you heard anything about it? Yeah, fenugreek, largely for men, it will help you, I think. It's going to help you raise free testosterone or convert some of your, better optimize the free testosterone number. Maybe it's lowering estradiol doing that. I don't exactly know. I forget. But that's fenugreek is predominantly a sex hormone modifying or libido enhancing compound for men. Doesn't mean it's not neuroactive in some other way, which maybe they're promoting it. But off the top of my head, I don't know. They have some dopaminergic mechanism. I'm not really sure. But they'll plug anything they can sell. Nootropics Depot, that's for sure. Lorcan, what is the... Thank you for your question, Kim. Lorcan, what is the lowest risk, least finicky brain repair nootropic? Lowest risk. Probably Noopept. Probably Alcar, right? I mean, that less safe, less finicky, like can take it forever. Probably Alcar. The literature on that is super clear. It's nerve growth factor expression via long-term use. Alcar, let me see. Was it this paper? I don't know if it's that paper. Let me find the paper. I think it's this one. Acetyl-L-carnitine treatment increases nerve growth factor levels and choline-acetyltransferase activity in the central nervous system of aged rats. Yeah, I believe it's this paper. But I think there's a couple other papers. I don't know if you guys can see that. That would be the paper. Acetyl L-carnitine treatment increases nerve growth factor levels and choline-acetyltransferase activity. Yeah, so that's your kind of like lowest hanging fruit, safest option if you want to engage in brain repair. Alcar also removes lipofuscin from your brain, which is like a toxic buildup of metals and things, sugars and hosts of other things. Daring Danielle, love your name, is saying, I've never tried any racetams. There are so many options that I was unsure where to start. Start with piracetam. That's kind of the granddaddy of racetams. I'd start with like 2 grams or so. Low dose choline source, alpha GPC would be fine, 50 to 100 milligrams. See how you fare from there. And then it's like the rest of the racetams, they add complement to what piracetam would do, which make you focus, have better verbal fluency, probably have a little more brain energy, be a little lighter on your feet, kind of cognitively. But then they're all sort of specific individually. Like aniracetam is very potent for working memory. Like you should remember more digits, remember more of what you're doing, more engaged in your work and focus via that optimization of working memory. Improves memory IO. Oxiracetam, largely the same. Phenylpiracetam, however, is just like a stimulant, basically. Fasoracetam is a GABA B modulator, so it's going to calm you down and make you feel kind of like you're in a flow state and function a little better. And then pramiracetam is just like a information in, information out kind of racetam, a good study smart drug, if you will. But yeah, start with piracetam, 2 grams, low dose choline source, and then go from there. Read about them extensively. We've got a lot of content on it. So, but you want to understand what they're doing and then associate that with the ensuing brain state that you end up in. Like, AMPA receptor modulation helps LTP, which helps working memory. You want to try to draw the correlations between what they're all doing so that you know which to take for what kind of stuff you're going to sit down and do. Lorcan, appreciate the dollar and euro looks like. DJ Wisdom with a Alcar and 3 exclamation points. Probably relative to the question of, what's the compound you could take that'll be reparative, but it's like, safe and whatever. I would certainly say that Alcar is right up there. Robert Evans, any quantifiable benefit from NAC anecdotally for what purpose? What were you talking about? Oh, for OCD. Not sure for OCD, but I just recently did a video on Glynac, which is high dose NAC and high dose glycine, and the research, the full study on it is like, I just read the full study. Insane. I mean, reducing insulin resistance, reducing oxidative stress, reducing inflammation, helping cognition, helping gait speed. So NAC is a very seriously beneficial compound. It's probably why it was sort of hard to get for a while, and on the somewhat like it was going to get banned or something. It's just, I think the FDA knows how powerful NAC is. Daring Danielle is saying, anyone still taking modafinil, or are there much better options in the market? Nah, I mean, in my opinion, there aren't better options. There's analogs that absorb quicker and onset quicker, have basically the same, mechanism of action. Which, yeah, sure, if you want to take a little bit less of the dose to get the same effect, like, fine, do it. Like armodafinil compared to regular modafinil, but I have heavily experimented with all of them, the analogs, like the more potent analogs, and I just don't think that armodafinil is any better. You take a little less of it, all right, cool. It's not doing anything much different. So yeah, no, I think you're going to find that the very productive entrepreneurs and the very productive people that are, that use modafinil or afinil analogs just stick with modafinil. It's like almost all of them. And I wouldn't know because I'm consulting them in Silicon Valley and I'm consulting them in New York, and they're using modafinil for afinils. They're using a lot of stuff, but when they're taking afinils, they're using modafinil. Robert Evans, thank you, Ryan. What would you recommend as the new best nootropics for OCD? Hard to say. I forget the mechanisms of action there, so I couldn't really give you a suggestion on that. Sidhu, Moda is still one of the best. Yep, assuming you have a prescription. Not suggesting you do anything. Jason is asking thoughts on taurine and effects on GABA and testosterone. I don't really remember the interaction there. GABA, God, this goes way back because I did study taurine. I don't think I was important enough for me to like store it in my memory. So I don't know. This is a hard question. What's my favorite nootropic? Man. These days, like I have too many favorites to name one. Uridine would be probably my number one. Just because how potent it is on the stimulation side, on the dopamine side, on the neurogenesis side. A very close second would be teocrine. I use a lot of teocrine these days, and it's mostly in torque, right? But like sometimes I'll just take it by itself, teocrine, and it's just like rocking almost every time. Favorite racetam would definitely be aniracetam. I don't process information as good on nearly anything than aniracetam. Favorite afanyl, modafinil for sure. Favorite research chemical, it's a mix between 9-MEBC and PRL853. I like the both of them, but BC I can't take a whole lot these days because it makes my other stimulants very, very too potent. Like I got to not dose BC for a while because all my stimulants are very strong, and then it's like if they lose potency a little bit or my brain's response, which is the dopaminergic response essentially from methylxanthines, is like downregulated or something, then 9-MEBC helps with that. Epic questions, guys. If you guys get any more last questions, we're going to wrap this thing up. You can throw them in there. You got about a couple minutes. In the meantime, just some maintenance stuff. Tomorrow, I will be doing probably an hour and a half podcast with Vigorous Steve, who is a bodybuilder who is into both nootropics and TRT and all things related to TRT. So we're going to have like a discussion about everything. Nootropics, TRT, testosterone, sexual function, entrepreneurship, manhood. I just think we're going to have, a great conversation tomorrow. So this will go live on this channel once it's edited. So I'll have control of the video once we're done filming, and I will put it on the Cortex Labs channel, and it'll probably be tomorrow. I don't have plans tomorrow because I think it's going to rain here in Pittsburgh. So I think I will be doing Cortex Lab stuff all day, aside from some blood work in the morning. Favorite exercise in the gym, probably be incline press. Yeah, incline press. Yeah, I just like doing it. I just like incline press. Other than that, yeah, I don't really love anything else, Some of the chest fly machine, I kind of like that, but incline press is like what I like the most. Sidhu, you are welcome. Yeah, try Torque. You're going to love it. I mean, this stuff flies literally off the shelves. I can give you guys a coupon code. Code 15 now, 15 now will save you 15% off of this stack. 15 now, 15 now. Just remember 15 now, livecortex.com. Our website's in the description of this video. It is insane. I mean, I'd hate to hype it like it's like a hype train or something, but it's just every time predictable good brain energy from Torque. Get it at livecortex.com. Brand a shirt. This is, it's so funny that you asked that, because as a guy that is just not into stylish shit, or like, it's just like, you should see how I dress. It's like this, and then I'm wearing like, khaki shorts, and I usually wear like some brown kind of like penny loafer type deals or whatever, like if it's spring, summer, jeans and the same, brown kind of dress shoes. I like to keep things really simple. And so on Amazon, I forget the name of the brand, but I found it on Amazon, just like simple shirts for men. And I'm like, okay, they fit me good. So I bought like every color, and they're just awesome. Really, really awesome. Pask Attack. Thank you, Ryan. Best content on YouTube for this topic lever channel. Appreciate it, man. I hope you're doing well. I hope you take heed to some of my suggestions on figuring out, what's happening with your anxiety, etc. Thank you for the questions. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate all your questions. This was very surprised, so I'm happy that you guys jumped on board. Looks like we got a good degree of people that jumped in here. I hope you have a great week. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have some plans. If you don't, I hope, your ability to chill and relax and unwind from the week. Like, I hope, it works out well. I hope your life is going well. I hope you're happy, healthy. And if you're not, you can always be working toward it. And that's kind of our mission as men, to fucking feel great, to like affect everything around us in positive ways, and to live the best life that, that we can live. I sound like Tony Robbins here, but honestly, that's how I think. I always want to improve. I always want to get better, treat everybody that to the best of your ability, as good as possible. And Now I'm ranting about personal development. All right. Have a great night, guys. Tomorrow, more than likely, the whole podcast with me and Vigorous Steve will go live on the channel. So look forward to that. All right.